and welcome back to Filter Optional. I'm Chico West.
And I'm Shannon West.
And we are here today to celebrate our 30th episode.
Oh, really? I haven't counted.
Yeah, I just happened to go last night and look on iTunes and,
See how many. So you were up to episode 29. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Last week's episode was on Pride, and that was episode 29.
Nice.
And what's going on with you today?
Well, I have a little bit of a cold, and so I'm a little nasally, so I'm sorry for the way I sound.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I've seen you at night put hot compress on on your sinuses, underneath your eyes, on your head.
Yes, you can probably see it in my face if you're watching. It's been lingering. It's kind of brutal.
It is.
I'm a little over it.
Yeah. It's it, but at least today, this afternoon, you're going to go to the doctor and get it checked out. And so those are it's just one of those things.
We'll see, yeah.
And the bummer about you is you got to be really careful in taking antibiotics.
I can't take antibiotics. I mean, it has to be like emergency.
Yes.
I mean,
and it's just a bummer.
Yeah.
It's just how your body is.
Exactly. I'm not sure an antibiotic is what I need, though. We can do an entire podcast on the whole, gut biome and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'd love to do, because I'm not sure. I mean, okay, to be totally unfiltered.
For you, yes, I like that.
It is clear liquid that is coming out of my nose right now.
Yes.
So I don't think that signals an infection, which... you don't need an antibiotic if you don't have an infection.
Yeah, it's not yellowy or anything like that.
So, Dr. West, quit trying to prescribe an antibiotic for my situation.
My grandfather was a doctor, so that makes me a doctor.
Yes. Well, no, your mom's a doctor.
Yeah, my mom is a doctor. Exactly.
So that makes your mom's dad was a doctor, and that made her a doctor, and then therefore made you a doctor.
Yes. I mean, it was like couldn't prescribe ourselves.
It's like, get some antibiotics. That'll make you better.
Or get a shot of penicillin and
wait,
what was the other shot she would always recommend?
B12.
Yes. I mean, so she
Which there's some value to the B12 situation,
yes.
but anyway.
It's wild. Last week, I loved last week's episode on Pride. We were talking to our producer, Kevin. He was surprised that we didn't have more controversy about people saying, well, I use the word proud and stuff like that.
It seemed like there were more people who were in agreement with you guys.
Well,
I was expecting a little more controversy.
Well, it's very funny because I listened to one of Kevin's another podcast that he produces on my way home from Horseshoe Bay, because I was in the car and I love to listen. I listened to a little Remedy with Tova Cito, and then I listened to some Simple Talk with Wayne McCullough.
I like Wayne. He's a good dude. He
is a good dude, and I listened to him, and he had an episode with his brother, and it was great. And I know both of them from high school, but he said he was talking about how proud he was of his brother and everything, and I was laughing because I was like, I guess they recorded this before our episode, because Kevin, I would expect Kevin to jump in on that podcast.
I would have had to, yeah, absolutely,
and say,
I might have to shoot.
Are you sure you want to use that word, proud, or whatever?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was just funny.
I might
but
have
thank you for listening, though. We're all one big happy podcast family here. It's
yes,
great.
we are.
Everybody knows each other, I swear, some way or another.
They do.
It's really weird.
It's very strange.
The world is getting smaller as we speak.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Had I had more time in the car, I would have listened to Wanda and everybody else. But
you should listen to yourself too every once in a while.
I do recap with myself too. But
yes.
And it's
good. What I'm excited about today's episode.
Yeah.
If y'all have been watching us, you saw we had a couple episodes about the CASA staff and stuff like that. Well, one is we're bringing on a staff member today. That wasn't with us, that day we did the 2-part episode on CASA staff. But I'm really excited because, I'm going to really turn it over. You want to say anything before we turn it over to our guest today?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to lead him, correct? But
I am going to lead him.
Poor guy.
But today I would like, for our staff member to introduce himself in a language that he grew up with. So today, who are you?
你好，我叫白勇。
Is that Chinese?
That's Chinese.
Yeah.
Yes. So what is your name?
My name's Caleb Perrette.
Caleb, we are excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yes, and so the thing is, you were speaking Chinese. How come? Tell us a little bit about you, and what brought us together and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. So a little bit atypical, my story. I was born in Hong Kong, and I grew up in China, and I actually was there until I was 17 years old, and kind of throughout that whole process.
You don't look Chinese.
I get that a lot,
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, I don't see it.
Yeah. Well, you just got to get to know me a little bit. It comes out the more you know me.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so through the course of growing up there, I got introduced to alcohol at a pretty young age, and then.
But how were you living there? Are your parents Chinese?
No. So my parents actually are missionaries in China, and so they do a lot of work with like orphanages, doing like rehabilitation and adoption for handicapped orphans, and so like that's kind of their main thing they do over there. And preemie babies, they do a lot of work.
And so, are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest, and I have 5 siblings.
Oh,
So there's 6 of us total.
6 of y'all, and so your parents were these missionaries that had their first child, you, over in China.
Yes. And so just kind of to give a little background on that, China's very, it's a very male dominant culture, and there's a lot of value placed on the firstborn male son, because in essence, it is a insurance policy for families, because traditionally in a agrarian society, your son would be the one that would then take on the farm and provide for you in your old age. And so traditionally speaking, the oldest son is held in high esteem, high regard, and basically is very entitled and spoiled, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up in that culture till you were 17, but you grew up as a missionary kid. That's kind of like a preacher's kid, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a little worse.
How so?
Well, I mean, preachers, they're here in country, so they're already pretty, their kids are pretty crazy. But missionary kids, their families found it necessary to move to a whole different country to do the preaching. So, I would say that there's a whole nother echelon of craziness.
Oh, so
Yeah,
it kind of set you up. So you were getting ready to go into your story a little bit. So
Yeah.
how did we meet? What was
So I started drinking when I was 12, and from that moment on, I would say an abnormal drinker. As we refer to in the recovery industry, is that when I started, I could not stop, and that was from the first time I started drinking.
And now, were you drinking with other 12-year-olds, like other missionary kids, or other what was
I was more the bad influence
your-
for those people, but the
Yeah.
thing is because of that kind of cultural stance on the firstborn in China, that I made friends with people, and I was treated as an adult at a young age.
Right.
And so my friends were people that owned businesses, stuff. I mean, they were full-grown adults, but
Yeah.
I was viewed as one of the clan. And so in that,
did you have facial hair like you do now?
No, I have a great picture actually. My friends give me a lot of crap about it. They're like, "Who's this off of Dawson's Creek?"
right.
But the big thing is I felt like when I was there with those guys, I had a sense of togetherness and belonging.
Right.
That for me, it really kind of filled a hole in my heart in a lot of ways. In that I felt connected and I felt like I belonged.
When you were drinking?
When I was drinking, when I was accepted by those guys for who I
Yeah,
was.
right.
Because did you feel? I mean, I did some missionary work after I got sober overseas, but I was on a military base in Germany working with
Americans.
Right.
I wasn't working with foreigners. I was living around foreigners, Germans and stuff. But did you feel this sense of you talked about you had that acceptance and stuff like that? Did you feel a little different? I knew I was different. I wasn't part of the military. I lived with families. I didn't have any military status or stuff like that.
Right.
I had some benefits of working on the military, but everybody I interacted with was part of the military or was part of the Department of Defense. So I felt a little, awkward, lonely, and stuff like that?
Like you
Did-
kind of fit, but not totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you have that growing up?
Absolutely, and there's a term that is used now in psychology. It's called a third culture kid. It's when someone is transplanted from their original culture into another one, and you are neither part of culture A or culture B because you have parts of both, and so you're in this in-between culture, if you will, called the third culture. And
Okay,
so-
those military kids were a lot that way because they would be stationed. Their parents would be stationed in Germany for maybe sometimes 1 year, but 2 years to 3 years, and then they'd leave and go back to the States or a different country. So I call them the military kids because they were great at acclimating right away,
Absolutely.
but they didn't go into. I mean, to get a deep conversation, it was hard. They were very guarded. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Do
no, yeah,
you
that-
identify with that?
Well, that's my vibe completely. And I think for me, it was I learned at a very young age how to be a chameleon.
Yeah.
How to be the missionary kid when I came back to the U.S. We'd be paraded around these churches and stuff like that, and all that. And so I had to play the part, if you will. And then coming back to China, I was always the white kid, so I had to figure out a way to fit in there as well. So there was always, I can acclimate to any situation. I learned that at a very young age.
Yes.
It's just part of my DNA now from
Yeah.
growing up over there.
Well, definitely. And so, fast forward. So you're an alcoholic drug addict. What brought you to I know our story, but why don't you tell our story from your perspective?
Okay.
And so what happened? What transpired?
Okay, so the lead up of my alcoholism was so a couple of things are important to note in this. That towards the end, my parents never tried to come grab me and talk me into treatment or anything like that. So the kind of the culmination of that led me down this path where I was allowed to run out my alcoholism to a very kind of far degree, if you will. Like I was able to run it all the way out, and so basically by the time I was about to give up on life itself, it had gotten very dark. And I had been, I'd gone dark on my family. They had known where I was for over a year. I'd been busted 3 times in a row with some big drug busts.
And you were in China, and your parents didn't know where you were.
Well, this was back in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
So my mom actually told me she was looking through online obits and looking at hospitals and jails trying to see if I was still alive or dead.
Yeah.
And so I was doing a lot of drug.
And how long ago was this?
This was 7 years ago. In April is when things started to shake up. So April 2012 is when things started to shift.
And so you've been sober since when?
June 3rd.
June 3rd of 2012. So 7 years.
That is correct.
Okay, so we're talking about 7 years ago. You were in the crapper.
Oh yeah, it was not good.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how.
And your parents didn't know where you were, but were you married at the time?
So married but separated. So
Did she know where you were?
no, nobody knew where I was. I just disappeared. I was gone. And so my poor wife met me during the 1 month of my entire life where I was completely sober.
Oh my gosh.
And she really liked that person. And so, 5 years later, after much, tumult, we split ways. Because I would disappear for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. She finally got to the breaking point. I'm done. So she moved out to California. We actually signed the divorce papers. But I thought about it. I was like, well, I'm literally drunk from sunup to sundown. I can't go show up in a judge's chamber with these divorce papers because they'll probably get in trouble. Well, and so I had a plan in June of the following year that I was going to kill myself because there's essentially nothing that I had found that made me okay. I was constantly tuned about 5 degrees off, like a radio knob when you're just the old school ones, you know.
Oh yeah.
When you're just a little bit off of tuned
I'm surprised
in.
you know that.
Yeah, the white noise, and so the white noise was always turned up in my life, and I could not find a way to turn it down to be okay.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of accepted the fact that I was gonna die drinking and that I was gonna take my life into my own hands.
Yeah.
And so we split, and I made a commitment to myself that I was going to go down the darkest path possible. I was going to basically party and run and gun and do all the things that I'd already been doing, but to an even more kind of morbid, terrible degree. And then I was going to take my life in June of the next year. And actually, the reason I chose June is because, as selfless as I am, I didn't want to interrupt my sister who's getting married, her wedding or her honeymoon. So,
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
I
Yeah.
sacrificially waited
Uh-huh.
until I was going to wait until June to kill myself, so I didn't disrupt the honeymoon.
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
I
nice.
like how you say that, sacrificially. So what? So that was June of April, May, June of 2012, 7 years ago. And so, you know, and I love our relationship. So talk about what happened. You had tried getting sober before. You had failed at it miserably. So
I tried so many times to quit drinking on my own. You know, my wife would actually come in and force feed me beers because I was getting to kind of end stage alcoholism with regards to how my body was responding to it, and so just completely hopeless. And it was about a week before I was going to take my own life that I had, you know, I had a moment of utter realization after talking with my dad about what it meant to truly relinquish control of my life. And he wasn't trying to preach at me this time. He just kind of spat the truth and then walked off the porch.
Yeah.
And it kind of blew my mind, and I broke in a way that was life-changing. I looked up at the night sky, and I realized then that I wasn't the sum total of my mistakes. I wasn't the sum total of who I was going to be, that I was irrevocably loved there in that moment, and that all I had to do was relinquish my hold on trying to make things the way that I wanted them to, and that I could actually commit my life to something far bigger and greater than me, and I could trust in that. And in that moment, something happened. I hadn't slept for weeks with night terrors. I burst into tears. It was transformational, and I went to sleep like a baby that night. The issue is I was still addicted to alcohol on a physical level.
Yeah.
So during my sister's wedding, there was a guy that said, "Hey, if you ever need anything, just show up," in Dallas. And so I took him at his word. I was halfway to Dallas. I called him. I said, "Hey, I got a couple of Xanax."
that was Chris, correct?
Yeah, Chris Peterson. Shout out
Yes.
to, is a good man.
Yeah.
Good man. And he's actually part of the story of later on of us meeting. But I was headed to his house. I said, "Hey, I'm coming to your house. I'm going to try to detox myself. I have some Xanax. I'm going to try to slowly wean myself off. I've done this before. It's terrible. You're just going to have to leave me in your back house for like 96 hours. And so during the course of that, of getting there, what I didn't know is that my family friends had two of their sons had gone through your sober living Gaston House back in the day, and they had already kind of networked on the back end, like, hey, this is a possibility if Caleb's ever truly ready. But my parents never offered it. That's the big thing, is they never tried to coerce me into it. It was when I was utterly ready, they said, hey, here's an option for you. Yeah. And so you were in talks with them on the back end. I didn't know about this. So I was planning on, I'd gone to Applebee's, and I had this beer and I drank it. And in my mind, I was like, all right, that's my last beer. We're about to go do this thing. We're going to detox. And there was a phone call from you to Chris Peterson, I believe. And you explained to him that, that I needed to keep drinking. And I still get teared up talking about this because it was the first time that it's like a connection was made with me in a real way, where someone spoke the language of alcoholism. Someone said, no, keep drinking, you got to medically detox. And for me, that was so mind-blowing, because my entire life, the only thing that I'd ever heard was, you need to stop drinking. You need to moderate your drinking. You got to figure out your drinking.
Right.
No one had ever told me to continue to drink. And so what happened then was, for me, it was 1,000% buy-in in that moment. I said, I don't know who that person is.
With that gruffy voice.
Yeah, I don't know who that is, but I will trust that person. And it was 100% buy-in. You know, I was in. And so Chris dropped me off at Gaston House the next day, and he had been faithfully feeding me tequila shots. Bless him.
Yeah.
And Chris didn't know me. I'd talk to him on the phone, and he just trusted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we get you into, you know, you spend the night. We get you into medically detoxed facility. It worked out. And the deal was, man, you were ready. Not everybody's ready, okay, when they
No.
go to treatment.
No.
But the deal is, you were ready, but then you followed the plan.
Yes.
You stayed, you went through detox, you came through my sober living, you stayed, I think 7 months. Is that correct?
6 months on the day.
6 months on the day, and then you transitioned out. You got a job, you did everything we asked, and you were, I mean, you poured yourself into getting a sponsor, working the steps, trusting the direction we were giving you, correct?
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, to highlight that is, I had a 2 to life suspended sentence.
Yes.
So I wasn't going through this to try to get out of jail. I was going through this so I could live, and then maybe I'd be alive for jail. Like, it wasn't like, hey, if I just do this, then I'm gonna. The writing was on the wall. Like, I was going to big boy jail for a while.
Yeah, and so I'm glad you're sharing this story. And Shannon was asking, okay, hey, what are we going to talk about? And we spent the last 20 minutes kind of talking about your story. But what I really want to talk about is, okay, you stayed at Gaston House. You ended up working for me. I sold it. You stayed there. Now Gaston House, in and around, and you came back. But really what I want to talk about is community. What was it that you got attracted to when it came to community? You talked about, growing up in China and you felt that connection. But what about this community that has helped you maintain 7 years of sobriety? Okay, yeah, I connected and said, hey, keep drinking, and I know that stuff. But really what I want to talk about is just this sense of community that you had, and that you and other guys that went through the Gaston House, model, started doing community after you graduated the Gaston House.
Yeah.
And you're still in community with those guys. So what is it about community? What did you find?
So if you remember me talking about the Third Culture Kid experience, I
Yeah.
think for me, I was finally in a place where people were speaking my language. It's almost like I was in a room with other Third Culture kids who accepted me for who I was, who realized that I wasn't also the sum total of my mistakes. And
It kind of is a third culture. Addiction, addiction, recovery.
Yes,
I mean,
it
right?
is.
Am I
Yeah,
right?
in a lot of ways.
Because it is a culture and it's not the one you grew up in, and it's, not the one that the rest of a lot of people around you are living in, and it's this kind of third culture of recovery, right?
Yeah, and
it's,
I think in a way it's even third culture even more so, is because you get these guys like Caleb and a lot of his buddies that he's still friends with. You and I know most of them, and we're still good, friends, and gone to those weddings and stuff like that. But this culture of this rigorous transparency, this almost unbridled exposure of self.
right.
So there's that third culture.
Right.
You understand it because you've been with me and living with me. We're getting ready to celebrate 24 years of marriage, and today's Caleb's 32nd birthday. Did you know that?
Happy birthday!
Yeah.
I didn't know it was
Yes.
your birthday. Well, I
Yeah.
hope you got some cupcakes or something.
Well, maybe we might do that.
He doesn't do birthdays well. He's
Yeah, but the deal is it is that third
so
culture.
it's July. What's
30th.
30th?
Yeah,
July
and so
30th.
there's that
Okay. Happy
that sense of community and it's that culture. Has that been kind of a driving force in your recovery?
absolutely. And let me give you an example of how the lights came on that. We did this group at Gaston House one time. It was a knees to knees, and essentially
When you were a resident.
when I was a resident, and essentially it is, you pair off with guys, and then you go through a list of tough questions that normally guys like me, I'm going to hold these secrets. I'm not going to talk about this stuff. And the delightful thing is I was paired up with pretty much the polar opposite of me. My dear friend who actually just wished me a happy birthday, Pat Thornhill. Shout out to him. And Pat and I are very different human
You
beings.
are very different. I will agree with you. I concur.
But I'd always felt different as a missionary kid, and here I am sitting across. And Pat also was the only guy that had an issue with me showing up at Gaston in the first place. I already kind of had a resentment at this guy. So here I am sitting across from this guy, you know, completely different, but we're asked to be honest, and we're asked to answer these questions. And what happened in that moment was two guys became willing to go, you know what? F it. You know, I'm going to do it. I'm going to actually expose these parts of myself that I've kept secret for so long, the things that I don't want to talk about, the shame that I experienced, the fear that I live under hiding these things. And we did so. And what happened then was there was such a sense of connection that, like, he's one of my best friends, been to, you know, I was in his wedding, you know, we still give each other crap about, you know, our football teams.
Yeah.
But it was that bridge right there. And what happened in that connection is
Well, pause for a second. I love it. You're still guys. You still, you know, you're an avid Cowboys fan. He's an avid Redskins fan. Y'all still have that camaraderie and giving each other shit and stuff like that. But man, you broke down those walls and you became vulnerable with each other.
Yes.
Which kind of goes countercultural to.
Well, it creates a safe space, and when we're in addiction and, you know, you're out amongst people that they aren't safe for you, you know, certain community is not safe.
Yeah, well, and I love that you said that, because I got this Nowen quote, you know, and right here he goes, probably no word better summarize the suffering of our time than the word of homeless. It reveals one of our deepest and most painful conditions, the condition of not having a sense of belonging, of not having a place where we can feel safe, cared for, protected, and loved.
Right.
You know, and so there's that place of, you know, because we see a lot of times with addiction that guys feeling that sense of homeless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though they might be in the midst, and if they're addicted to, you know, stimulants, they're in the party thing, but you see the opiate crisis and they're just, you know, shooting up by themselves or but they still don't feel connected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you were around a lot of people in your addiction, but you still didn't feel connected.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. You know.
And so getting to that place of community, you know, and the deal is, what was it, you know, with you? You're now our business development guy at Casa Colina. You know, I love that because it's not. What I like is I like to, you know, get creative. People give me a hard time. I'm coming up with a different word. Think outside the box. I always use. But I'm getting creative because you don't have a real history of business development. But I want you to connect with people because you know what it means to connect. So what brought you to Casa? What was it that you see at Casa Colina? And it's not Chico, but it's Casa Colina. What is it?
So, you know, the cool thing is that, well, first of all, your staff there, like one of my good friends runs operations.
Sean.
You know, Sean. Yeah. And he, I was actually, back when I worked at Gaston, I was his house manager.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the cool thing is we already had a history of holding each other accountable, and speaking truth to each other, you know. And so just knowing that my experience at Gaston House is, you talk about home, like it was Gaston home, you know.
Yeah.
And so I knew that a guy like Sean, who had also gone through there, working for you, I knew that culture was there. You know, I just knew that culture existed there. And for me, when we talked about me coming on board, there was such a longing to get back to kind of this sense of home, if you will. You know, and I love our tagline, you know, welcome home, because truly that's how I felt when I first got sober. You know, and now being able to work with a team where, like, that's our mission is for guys to feel that safety so that they can get to the point of vulnerability, for me is so attractive. And that is what I want to be part of, because it changed my life.
Yes. And so here's the deal, Caleb, is I love that. And I think it's hard to explain, and I'm glad Shannon's here, is, you know, it's hard to explain that at homeness. We want guys to have at homeness, but that doesn't mean we're going to compromise from being truthful. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
You know, and so it's like, okay, hey, there's that homeness, but there is that vulnerability. That picture you painted with you and Patrick in the knees to knees. Y'all had your struggles, you know, your resentments, but you kind of pulled down those walls and exposed to each other, you know, your crap.
Yeah, and you know, and that's what I get excited about with guys that I see at Casa going through some of the intensive stuff, is because I can see the moment when the guard comes all the way down, you know, and watching guys have enough of a sense of safety to be able to do that with a room full of other guys. For me, it's nostalgic, but it's also exciting.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, and so it comes to that place where all of a sudden men with addictions that have done, you were facing, you know, a lot of prison time for distribution and stuff like that, and you're going, okay, I felt this at homeness. At first you wanted to be sober, but then it was like something else changed. It's like, man, I can have true community. I can get in and really, you know, begin to expose the stuff in my life that has been blocking me, because like I think you believe that just as I is, liquor, drugs was but a symptom of my problem.
Absolutely.
And so you had to
Absolutely.
get down to those causes and conditions.
Well, and there's just something so freeing with finally being at a place to be able to go, you know, wow, this insecurity has run rampant in my life. I've never really thought about it. I've avoided it, but now I just get to bring it to light.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a freeing thing to be able to do, and to connect with someone over it, because 9 times out of 10 you do something like that and guys are going, well, man, hey, me too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you know what I love is I love that you and Shannon are working really close together. You know, that she brings that female perspective. How's that been?
It's been awesome because, you know, there's been a gentling of you, if I'm being honest, and she kind of is a great foil for that.
Oh man,
You know?
I appreciate that, because I can be just kind of headstrong bull in a china shop.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, sometimes that tornado.
Yes.
And she is that maybe that Chico whisperer.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I value that, and so
I just know where you're gonna go with your whatever it is, whether it's just your train of thought, your ADD, your like business wise. Like I know the next thing you're gonna, and so I can kind of get in front of it. Like, hey,
Yeah.
hey Caleb, this is coming next.
Yeah, you did that this week, and it was dead on. I was like, sweet. Yeah.
So you know, I'm kind of
Shannon's the glue.
I come before
Yes.
you, and I'm like the snowplow.
yes, and you do a great job, and that's the cool thing about our team and what's happening at Casa, and I love having you part of that. I love that you are committed to community, and you bring not just your business development and you're willing to learn, but you're bringing that sense of community too with your relationship with Sean. I love how you're getting that relationship with John and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Kay, and you know, all the other staff is there's that you're modeling that for the other men that are actually residents at Casa Colina.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I get a lot of joy going there, and the guys that maybe haven't seen me in a week or so or something get excited, because it's like, you know, there is a sense of like, hey, you know, our family member's back, you know,
Yeah,
like
totally.
let's welcome them in,
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly. You know, and so that you know, today is, you know, we've been talking to you, Caleb, just a little bit about your story, but that sense, we got to get you back on to really dig deeper into this sense of community that I'm not sure a lot of people really understand community. And really, and you grew up in that Christian missionary culture. You know, we use the word community a lot in especially these Bible churches, and you know, we use the word community in the recovery circles, but I'm not sure how you frame it up what true community is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think how I experience that, and what we see, like with my friends, and how do I say this? I think the willingness to be honest to the degree that I put myself at a disadvantage while at the same time experiencing grace for my vulnerability and practicing that over and over and a commitment to that over and over and over. It's not a one-time deal. It is you continue to expose and even when it's not something I want to do, even if it's ugly, even if it's like some terrible thought I had that I don't want to be part of my life, hey, put it out there, you know? And it's reciprocal, because when I do that, it opens it up for other people to do the same. But the thing is truth without grace is just legalism, and there has to be that side of love that comes with it.
Yeah.
And so it's this balance of truth and love that happens in community that I think makes it all work. And for me, you know, what changed my life is my relationship with Jesus, and experiencing that on a personal level in my heart. When I talked about being on the back porch and that I wasn't the sum total of my mistakes or what I was going to do, that's what it's like to be in community and to be fully known yet accepted at the same time. And it's something that is not comfortable. It's not fun. It gets messy. You know, we've had we've had community roundtable discussions around stuff. I mean, it's not like, oh, you know, here's the simple ABC solution to this. Put this together, $375 for 40 minutes, and you get community. It takes work, and
Right.
and a lot of times it's uncomfortable work. But at the end of the day, it provides a connection that is far deeper than anything else I've experienced.
Exactly. You know, and so I'm excited about, you know, you being part of the team. I'm excited about you going out there and really giving people a glimpse, a taste of what recovery can be about, a taste of what, hey, let's dig deeper at Casa Galena. But I love your love for your friends, for your wife, for your daughter. You know, those kind of things really give us that sense of hope that you too can recover.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so anything else you want to add, Shannon?
No, I just want to add that I'm hoping the next time we film, I'm not so sick.
I know. You can hear it in your
I
voice.
know.
Thank you,
I
Kevin,
feel
for another
better.
great episode.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it. You'll take care.
Yes, thank you.